Welcome, everyone. Hello. Hi, my name's Ilana. Eyal. I'm the Israel Ride manager. I'm sure you've gotten a ton of emails from me, and I hope you read them. They're usually short and brief. So yes, welcome to the logistics call. I have here with me two people who will help host tonight. Sharon Cohen, who's in the marketing team. She's a longtime Israel rider and captain of Team JNF. Hi, Sharon. And David Eisenberg, also a longtime alum, former captain of Team JNF and vice chair of the Israel Ride. Hi.
Nice to see everybody.
Okay, great. Because of the recording, okay. Sorry, the view was being strange on my computer, but now it's working. So yeah, we thought that the format for this call could be as such. There's different topics we could talk about for the Israel Ride. So we will give a brief overview about each topic, and then we'll open it up for questions, and then we can move on to the next topic and give a brief overview and open it up for questions. Feel free to introduce yourself when you unmute for a question. If you have a question, you could either write it in the chat or you could raise your hand and we could call on people one by one. So yes, hello, welcome, and I'll pass it to David to start the first topic.
Thank you very much, Ilana. It's good to see all of you. I hope to see all of you in like 11 weeks in Jerusalem, which to me is always very exciting. Let me, before I get into any individual topic, let me just identify the five sort of brackets of topics that we have in mind, so you can think about those as you think about questions you want to raise. And I would reiterate what Ilana alluded to. This is a logistics call. The whole goal of this call is that you feel comfortable as you're preparing between now and the ride of what's ahead, what do you need to do to prepare, what happens when you show up in Israel, things like that. So it's your call. Feel free to ask your questions. The topics we have in mind, high level, getting yourself to and from Israel and to the bike ride in Israel, so to our base hotel in Jerusalem. Number two is, what are your options before and after the ride? Number three, which I actually think of as the easiest one because it's what we spend the whole year working on, is logistics during the ride, getting from point to point, how your luggage moves, how you move, things like that. Number four, which I separate out, is either bike rentals or bike transport, depending on whether you're renting or bringing a bike. And then thoughts, with only 11 weeks to go, what should you be focusing on today? Other than that, I have a few broader topics that we'll touch on throughout or come back to, because they're things that we want to be sure we address too. But first part of this is just getting yourself there. And we spend a huge amount of time, starting more than a year before the ride, of what happens from the moment you check into our hotel to the moment you finish the ride. But it's your responsibility to get yourself to the beginning of the ride. A couple things are a little bit different this year. So for alumni, there's some changes to be aware of. For brand new riders, it's just things to be aware of. As hopefully everybody knows, we ask that at the latest, you need to be checked in, registered with us at the rides-based hotel outside of Jerusalem by Tuesday morning. So Tuesday at noon is what we suggest as the deadline. That said, my strong advice would be that you make your plans to get to Israel sometime before that, so you can deal some with the jet lags, and if your luggage doesn't all end up traveling with you, it's had a chance to catch up with you so that you can enjoy some of Israel. But the absolute deadline is Tuesday morning. This year we're doing a couple of things slightly differently. We're doing 2 full-day touring options in Jerusalem on Monday. And something we're going to put sort of together with those options is we're going to, because the hotel is not inside Jerusalem, it's on the outskirts. So what we're going to do is our bus that's transporting people for those tours will also be transporting people who are just now checking in and need a ride to the hotel. So on Tuesday, there'll be some meeting points in Jerusalem. If you're on one of the tours, that'll all be taken care of as part of the tour. If you're not on one of the tours, we'll give you a meeting point and times that we could pick people up. I'm sorry, I said on Tuesday, on Monday, and also on Tuesday morning, we'll have a morning pickup in Jerusalem. So if you're wondering about, well, the hotel's on the edge, what's the best way to get there? On Monday, we can get you there. If you're coming to the hotel sooner, we're looking into potentially having one van that could bring people out on Sunday. But other than that, choices are taxis and other things like that. After the ride, so the other bookend, the ride ends with a celebration in Eilat. After the ride, we book tickets for people based on what they've expressed in our forms portal as their preferences. We book tickets for people back to Ben Gurion. And that could be the next day, it could be several days later, really depends on what you want to do after the end of the ride. And as we'll get to in a little bit, there's some options. I think a key thing for people to keep in mind this year, we've identified a group of hotels in Eilat that are convenient to where the end of ride celebration will be, but it is the responsibility of each rider to book which hotel they're going to be in. So that's high level, that first bracket. Ilana, Sharon, anything you want to add before I open it up to questions?
Yeah, getting to the hotel, for folks who, let's say, are arriving on Monday before the ride, we will be looking at when everyone is getting in, and we can help pair you up with other riders who might be on a similar flight so that you could take a taxi together. So that's why filling out the flight form in the forms portal is very important to us, so we could help organize who's coming together. And also, whoever has a bike with them, there's the bike carrier that will meet you at the airport to get your bike so that you don't need to travel with your bike. So that's why the flights form is so important for us, and it'll help make your transportation to the hotel much easier. So there's that aspect. And then the same thing goes on the way back. We'll know when your flight out of Israel is, so that the bike courier can meet you at, the company can meet you at the airport, and you could collect your bike and, check back in so you could make your flight out of Israel. That's an important thing to note.
Yes.
Sharon, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say that though that sounds complicated, it is very simplistic. They give you a phone number to call this guy. He's there. There's always somebody there when you're coming and going. It's very simplistic.
Yeah. So basically, based on whatever, flight information you give us, they'll know to be there at the appropriate time, but you'll have their phone number and you'll be able to call them just to meet up with the right person to get your bike or hand off your bike. But they'll know beforehand to meet you at the airport. So yeah, does anyone have questions about getting to the hotel before the ride starts? I got a private message saying, are we staying at the same hotel as last year? So for Jerusalem, we're not. It's not exactly in Jerusalem. It's a bit out of Jerusalem. It's called Yarim Hotel. And most of the other hotels are the same. Actually, I wouldn't say most, but there's some hotels that are the same. We're staying at Keturah, which we always stay at. We're staying at Mashabe Sadeh and Yerucham, but at least for Jerusalem, it's a new hotel for us.
What's the name of the new hotel? You just give us.
Yarim. It's YEARIM. And all of this information can also be found in the forms portal in the housing form.
Right. You can book your, if you're coming in Monday and want to stay Monday night, so you're there Tuesday morning for ease, which is what many people do. You can book your hotel right on the portal. It's taken care of. It's very simple to do.
Good point, Sharon. Yeah, so you could book through us because we've basically reserved a certain amount of rooms at the hotel. So you don't need to book through the hotel. You could book through us, and that way you can be paired up with someone if you want to, let's say, book to stay in a double room and you're not riding with a partner. You could book a double room through us and we'll partner you up with another rider so that you could stay at the hotel beforehand. Any other questions about getting to the hotel?
How
Pre
far
and
out of
post?
Jerusalem is the hotel?
That's a great question. I think it's like 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's near a village called Abu Ghosh, which is, yeah, probably from downtown, 20 to 30 minutes. So it's not a hotel to stay in while you're touring Jerusalem, but among the hotels that was available, it was actually a great hotel for us staging the ride, which is why we went with it for this year.
So here's Jerusalem. So if you want to take a bus or train to Jerusalem, you can, and take a taxi from there. So this red dot is where the Yarim Hotel is. So it's right outside of Jerusalem.
Alana's so good with that stuff.
I heard there
David,
was
go ahead.
Yeah, a question. I think one of you mentioned that there would be buses like jitneys or some sort on Monday to go from Jerusalem out to the hotel. Did one of you say that? Did I hear that correctly?
That is
Yeah.
100% correct. Our buses
And-
that are taking the tours in will make pickups and bring people back to the hotel because we've got the buses for the day. So they'll be making, potentially a couple of trips to get you to the hotel on Monday. And then
And
again,
will they stop at the train station? Because I'll be coming in from Tel Aviv.
likely, yes. That is one of the
Yeah.
places. We don't know. We need to find out where people are going to be, which all this logistic stuff will tell us when you fill
Yeah,
out all the
okay.
forms, and then we'll make those decisions. But that is a very high likely place to pick up, as there may be many people in your situation.
Okay, but all that information will be forthcoming once you're.
yeah.
Yes.
The exact time and location hasn't been announced yet, but there'll probably be two different locations. One will be closer to the old city, and one will be closer to the train station, bus station, like the main place where people get into Jerusalem.
The other thing to keep in mind with us doing that is if you'd like to join one of the tours in Jerusalem, but you won't be getting to Yarim on Sunday night, the buses have, they're the full-size buses with luggage carriers. So you can join the tour, put your luggage under the bus, and then when the whole tour goes back to the hotel, you'll go back to the hotel.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, if you, let's say, you want to on Monday just meet us at 8 a.m. in Jerusalem, you don't have to go back to the hotel. You can stay on the tour. We'll take your luggage back to the hotel, and you can have a whole day. I think this is a good segue into pre and post tours. Is that the
And
next
there's already
thing on your
question
list?
out. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, go for it, David.
I shouldn't always be the first to go, but pre and post, a couple of things, and for the exact details of some of the posts, I'm going to defer to Alana and Sharon. But pre, we do on Monday, we're doing a slightly longer version of a Jerusalem tour that we often do on the Tuesday of registration for the ride. The reason we're not doing it on Tuesday is because we are further from the city, but this will be longer. It'll give our lead guide, Bill Slott, will be leading it, more time to go in depth. And I've had the good fortune of being on Jerusalem tours with a bunch of guides. Nobody's better than Bill. So now that I've said that, hopefully he doesn't get a cold on Monday and you'd be disappointed with the person who comes, but he is wonderful. We're also doing a tour that really is designed to show sort of the two perspectives on the old city, East-West Jerusalem, and that's also been, I think, very successful and in good ways provocative for people in the past. A lot of us have our own sort of perception of Jerusalem and life in Jerusalem, and I think this broadens that perspective a little bit. So those will both be options available on Monday before the ride. After the
Those
ride,
those are both, those are both full day experiences
yes.
versus half day in the past.
And I think, at least to me, it's kind of exciting that they'll both be full day, because when we do them in half day, we're cramming a lot in. After the ride, we've for years done a Petra trip that we help organize. Another organization runs it, but that will be available. We'll get into the details of that. We're also continuing a program that we started just a few years ago that gives people an opportunity to go back to the Arava Institute, which is the beneficiary of the ride, and have a more intensive introduction to the program at the Institute. That in the past has been, not huge, relatively small, but hugely impactful. So that's actually something I would encourage people who have the flexibility in their schedule at the end. I'd encourage you to plan on it, because throughout the ride, you'll have heard a lot about the Institute, the programs at the Institute. You'll have met students and alumni from the Institute. But like we all know, there's nothing quite the same as when you can experience a little bit of it up close and personal. So that'll be the second option after the ride. Sharon, Alana?
Logistically, after the, you will have transportation after the ride, whether it's Petra or whether you're doing the Institute, which is an amazing thing to do. You will still have transportation to get yourself back up to Tel Aviv.
Yes.
That is still part of the trip. So you won't be left somewhere stranded. You will still have a way to get home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And also what Dina mentioned in the chat, which was that if you're doing either of the post-ride trips, the fee for the trip includes a hotel booking on Monday night of the ride. So you won't have to find your own accommodation in Eilat. We'll house you in a hotel so that everyone could be picked up for the trip the next day in the same hotel, like from the same location. So it saves you a little bit of that logistics. And then I'm trying to think what else for the pre and post.
The
Yeah.
hotel in Eilat where we're staying is the one we need to book online.
Yes.
Yeah, so everyone this year, everyone will be booking their own accommodation in Eilat. That's, the ride's over when we all get to Eilat, and everyone is free to book their own hotel accommodation that night, which is Monday night. For people doing the pre and post ride, the Israel ride will book accommodation for those folks so that they're all in the same hotel.
There are five hotels listed in the logistics to let you know what are close to the spot. I believe that the end party is at. So there's a map, and it'll tell you there are 5 hotels that are very close to where we're going to have our finishing party. So you'll know where to be if you want to be within walking distance.
Is that list available? And when do you think we should start making our reservations? Presumably already it's 2 months or so.
The list should be available, and I've already made my reservation. So I would, as soon as possible, if you want to make we don't have blocks booked like we would have in the past, because the hotels wouldn't give us a block. So it's all being done on an individual basis. So I would suggest the sooner the better.
It's in
We
the
have
housing form in Explority.
Do we have an agent, or is it just free for all? Make your own call.
It's free for all.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
there's so many different hotels in Eilat, as we all know. It's like a huge vacation destination. So there's a range of hotels and budgets. And do you want to be on the water? Do you want a pool? So everyone could kind of choose their own adventure.
And a little bit of context, because especially for the Eilatans, you'll no doubt are wondering, well, in the past, we've had a ride hotel in Eilat. It's a little bit the challenge of dealing with a monopoly. While there's a lot of hotels in Eilat, my understanding is they're all owned by one of 2 companies. And because it's a popular convention city where conventions come for multiple days, they won't give us large blocks that we just use for one night. So as an example, last year, we were forced to divide up between 5 different hotels. Several of those hotels actually had enough space that they could have taken the entire ride, but they won't do it. So we took the decision that having riders book their own individual, you'll still have substantially the same choice, but you'll actually have a choice versus us being at the mercy of these two hotel owners until literally weeks before the ride. So hopefully that actually turns out to be pretty smooth and easy.
David, I have a question about the bike on Monday. I will need some help getting it broken down and back into its crate. So I'm
Yes.
assuming the mechanics will be available and do that in time for us to wheel it or schlep it to the hotel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. No.
I'm going to get to bike transport and rentals, but Monday before the ride, very quickly, you know, however your bikes got to Israel, the courier will bring them to the hotel for
Tuesday morning.
assembly on Tuesday morning. At the end of the ride on Monday afternoon, our mechanics and your bike cases will be there for assembly and return to wherever they go. I should mention before we leave pre and post ride, because this I'm actually really excited about, and my apologies, I'm drawing a total blank on the name of the restaurant, but there's a very famous and really good restaurant in Abu Ghosh that I always just think of as the restaurant in Abu Ghosh. On Monday night before the ride, we're arranging a group dinner there for everyone who's already there who would like to join us. It's not officially part of the ride, but we are arranging it. So that's back to the references we've made several times now to the forms portal. It's a good reason to go to the forms portal, sign up for the dinner. I do apologize, I don't remember the name of it, but I have relatives who used to often give me a ride from Ben Gurion to Jerusalem when I'd first arrive in Israel. And when they had the time in their schedule, this was the restaurant they always insisted on stopping at. So it's very good, and I think people will enjoy it. That's on Monday night.
And it's
Before the
also
ride.
a good way to meet people beforehand.
Yes.
It's a social event. We've done dinners in prior rides that have just sort of been casually put together by different people. And it's just nice to, instead of meeting everybody all at once, you'll meet a smaller group of people in advance.
I just checked the menu. I have the menu for the restaurant, and it's called Abu Ghosh. So
That's why I can't remember the name.
yeah.
Of course.
Dan Miller, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question about the Eilat hotels at the end. I recall seeing the list of them in the forms portal. I don't recall if there was a place for us to tell you which one we're at, or how that's going to work in terms of like getting our bags to get delivered to the right hotel, or if they're going to be a central spot and we have to bring them, or what that plan is going to be.
There is not a place, you're correct, to fill out what hotel you're going to. It's going to really just be, there's going to be taxis at the end of the ride, and you can get in a taxi and go to your individual hotels. And of course, if you're at the same hotel with someone, you can buddy up, but
Okay,
we're
and there'll be
not-
like a central location that the bags will be
yeah,
brought to.
yeah, they're going to be at the end of the ride, at the beach ending. And also, does that answer your question, Dan?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay, great. Also for flights, we're arranging flights for everyone back from Eilat to Ben Gurion if you'd like to fly back. So also transportation from your hotel to the airport is on you, but we are arranging the flights. So that you could choose which flight you would like in the flights form in the forms portal.
One last thing, and then we will go to our next bracketed topic. Assuming you're not staying for one of the post-ride things and just heading back to the States, if you brought a bike, we strongly recommend that you not schedule a flight out until at least around noon on Tuesday. And that's because after the bikes get packed up in Eilat, they get transported back to a storage area near Ben Gurion Airport. They get there late at night on Monday night. And if you have a flight where our courier would have to meet you early in the morning, there's a good chance they will not yet have organized all the bikes. So there's actually a lot of great flights back to the States that tend to leave at night. So hopefully it won't be a problem for many people, but I would strongly encourage as you're booking your flights, if you haven't already, think Tuesday afternoon or later. Besides, you're in Israel. Stick around, enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Next big topic, although it's the one I think is the easiest, is logistics on the ride. And why do I say I think it's the easiest? It's because we spend the whole year working on it. And so even if there's some things that aren't completely final today, there's a team, there's support structure on the ground, there's our crew, there's our staff, and they're all there basically to be sure that from the time you check in for the ride until we finish on the beach in Jerusalem, or in Eilat, I'm sorry, there is no beach in Jerusalem. Till we finish on the beach in Eilat, that for the most part, you can kind of go with the flow. And in fact, that's what I'd strongly encourage you to do. It's a really wonderful bike ride with an incredible staff and crew, and they'll do most of the sweating of the details. That said, very high level, the flow, as you've seen on the website, outside of Jerusalem to Ashkelon, then Ashkelon into the northern Negev. That night we'll be staying at 2 different hotels depending on the riding group, and then ride into the Dead Sea Valley, where we'll be spending Shabbat. A quick note on riding into the Dead Sea Valley, and this is actually true everywhere where there's a big hill on the ride, actually everywhere on the ride. If you'd prefer not to ride, we'll give you a ride. So there's a pretty significant, the Dead Sea Valley is the lowest point on Earth. There's a pretty significant descent getting down there. It'll be part of the route, but there will also be a bus available to transport anybody who would prefer not to ride down. And we're still working on exact details of, might we add something else once people get into the valley. We spend Shabbat at the Dead Sea, which I think will be really special. Then on Sunday morning, this is new and different for alumni riders. The favorite day of riding on the ride, I think almost everyone who's ever done the ride, is the ride from Mitzpe Ramon to Kibbutz Keturah. But we'll be in the Dead Sea Valley. It's about an hour and a half away. We're going to early in the morning bus people from the Dead Sea Valley to the edge of the Maktesh in Mitzpe Ramon. And then we're going to bike the regular route. And I know the bus is not, we are well aware of this, the best way to start the day. On the other hand, I think given the amount of time that we usually spend at the edge of the Maktesh, it's where we usually do our group photo and things like that. That usually takes about an hour. So I don't think the bus will add as much time to the day as people might be worried. It is time on a bus as opposed to time at the edge of the Maktesh socializing with people. And then we'll go from there. We'll ride to Kibbutz Keturah. On the last day of the ride, which is the next day, we have a couple of options out of the Arava Valley. We all gather together at a common meeting point for the final ride. Really, it's about the final 13 miles of the ride into Eilat, where we finish with a beach party in Eilat. Most of the logistics through that period, we take care of, meaning most days it's the instructions to you as a rider are either to bring your luggage down to the lobby or leave it in the hall outside your room. We'll give you precise instructions each day. And our couriers will put it on the truck or on the bus, depending, and take it to the next location. So you shouldn't have to worry too much about that. A request I'm making this year, because we do learn from experience and also new products get developed. It's a good idea to use either an iTag or a tile, any kind of a tracking device that you don't mind buying, and have one in each of your pieces of luggage. And if you're bringing a bike to Israel, have one in the bike case or attached to the bike. Why is it a good idea? If on the way to Israel, the airline loses your bike case. It's been known to happen. That tag doesn't necessarily help the airline, but it may help us help the airline because it will show where the case is. So that's one. The ones in your luggage, we're a decent sized group. Our team is bringing the bags to your room many evenings, not necessarily all, but probably most. And sometimes a bag ends up in the wrong room. We haven't had the success we wish we'd had about getting riders to double check that all the bags in their room are theirs. Sometimes they just assume this bag that doesn't look like it belongs here belongs to their roommate. So having the tags in your bags will do a better job of telling us where it is and allowing us to make your bag start beeping at the other people in the room. So that's something we would request. I put it here because it's part of the logistics of the ride, moving your stuff along. Sharon or Alana, anything to add?
No, just that it's very seamless. The crew, which are usually alum of the ride, really do take care of everything. I mean, I've done many biking trips with many fancier companies, and the Israel Ride team is as good as any. I'll say that with our food as well, but you really don't have to worry about anything. I mean, everything shows up where it's supposed to, pretty much, minor exceptions. You just, the information that you're given on a daily basis will give you what you need to do each day, each morning. And if you follow the instructions, whatever you start the ride with will probably end the ride with you.
I don't have anything to add, but there's a bunch of questions in the chat that we could address.
Yeah, I was going to address Mindy's question, since
Sure.
I do the Israel Ride. I come for pretty much 11 days, 10 days, depending on my flights, and I come in hand luggage because you don't wear your clothes at night for more than 2 hours. You wear the same thing literally every night of the trip, and your clothes are still going to be clean. So the less, the better, because sometimes you're schlepping it up 2 to 3 flights of stairs. Sometimes it's being sent to your room on your own. So you want to be able to lift it and carry it. And less is more on this trip.
Yeah, actually, the hotel where there was a lot of schlepping upstairs was Mitzpeh Ramon, and we won't be staying there over Shabbat. So hopefully less schlepping this
You
year.
still have to move your stuff around a kibbutz.
Yeah,
I mean,
you may.
they're still schlepping.
That's
so.
true. Yeah, less is more. You won't be sweating in your night clothing, just your bike ride clothing. Sharon, do you actually want to speak to that about, like, I know you have a lot of experience with how many shorts to bring, how many jerseys?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I basically bring 1 pair of long pants, a couple shirts for the evening, and keep in mind it's much cooler in the desert at night than it is in the city, so you want to make sure you have layers. When it comes to riding clothing, I bring 3 kits. I wash them on Shabbat. I wash 2 on Shabbat. I don't even wash the 3rd one. I've got them for the next 2 days, and you just keep it simple. I bring, you bring a bathing suit. You bring what cosmetics you need, not which ones you want. I mean, you really don't need it. Sunscreen is probably the most important thing in toothpaste that you're going to bring with you. Though the Israel Ride does provide sunscreen on most stops.
We don't provide toothpaste, however.
They do not give you toothpaste. But you do not want, you don't want to bring, as an example, as a woman, you don't want to bring extra joy. Whatever you wear on an everyday basis, keep it on, wear it. You don't want to bring anything that you really don't need for that part of the trip. If you're coming for an extended period of time, and you want to bring another bag with you for your other travels, that bag can be locked away for our whole trip and brought back to you at the end, and you don't have to see it at all. So you can do that as well. So there's a number of ways to, if you're going to be in the country for 3 weeks and you need extra things, that can also be done. But what you keep with you on the ride can be very, very simplistic. Pair of shorts, bathing suit, a couple shirts.
And I would, as a reminder, we ask people to limit the luggage they bring on the ride to a suitcase and a small bag, like a day bag. And it really does make the lives of our crew much easier if you respect that limit. It also makes your life much easier because it reduces the likelihood of something being confused. So we'd ask that. We fully appreciate that for some people, you're going to be in Israel for longer, either before or after. As Sharon said, if you have another bag or bags, it doesn't really matter how many. If you give them to us at the beginning of the ride, we'll store them with all the bike cases. It's totally secure, and we'll give it back to you at the end of the ride. So you don't have to not bring stuff you'd like to have with you before or after, but try to be conservative about what you bring on the ride. Some people do like to dress a little bit nicer for Shabbat dinner. If you do, then obviously you want to bring that, but there's a packing list. I'm forgetting suddenly, is it on the website or the forms portal? I think it's in the forms portal.
I'll put it in the forms portal. We wanted to update it for this year. Last year we
That's right.
had a ton of COVID things involved. And this year, because COVID is less of an issue, we still do recommend to bring masks in case you want to mask up at any point. But we have to edit the packing list to just.
Yeah, so it'll be posted shortly.
I
One other thing
understood the question about what kits are. A kit is a shirt and shorts that match. That doesn't mean yours have to, but that's what they call that a cycling kit. So 3 pairs of shorts, 3 cycling shirts.
Thanks, Sharon.
Yeah.
One thing I glazed over in terms of logistics or things on the ride. The ride has regular rest stops. Rest stops are every 15 to 20 miles, usually halfway between rest stops. There's a pit stop. Rest stop is a required stop. Pit stop is usually an optional stop. They're all equipped with refreshments, water, shade, place to go to the bathroom, not necessarily a place with plumbing, a place to go to the bathroom. If sunscreen also, but if you have an energy supplement, drink, snack, whatever that you particularly like, bring it. The ones we have seem to be pretty good, and I think especially a lot of them are dried fruits and stuff that are actually really good and somewhat different from the energy stuff we use here in the States. But definitely, especially for the more experienced riders who might have a particular routine that they're really used to, bring the stuff that supports that routine. So could be tablets to add to your water, or particular energy bars or drinks that you like.
And I want to add one more thing, because this is something that we always say, that make sure that your helmet and your shoes are in your hand luggage when you fly to Israel, because you can't cycle without them. And they're hard to
Yes.
replace, especially your shoes. But if you don't have a helmet, you don't have shoes, you're not going to be happy. So make sure that that is in your hand luggage as you fly. Many people will also put a cycling outfit in their hand luggage just to be on the safe side. Not a lot of luggage gets lost, but every year, the first night, someone's luggage is missing, could be, stuck in a transit airport or whatever that's happened. So just make sure that you have what you need to cycle, because without those things, without the shoes and the helmet, most importantly, you will not be on a bicycle, and we don't have spares in the helmet department or the shoe department.
That was actually a great reminder that it must have finally been long enough since the airline lost my luggage and my bicycle that I'd forgotten to give that reminder. So thank you, Sharon.
You're
And if you're
welcome.
gonna bring your shoes, bring your pedals. They're gonna come off the bike anyway when they get
Yes.
packed. So if you have shoes, bring your pedals.
Thank you, Neil.
Good point.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
I have a question for David and Ilana. We talked about this yesterday. When I arrive at Ben Gurion Monday afternoon about 4 p.m.,
Okay.
is my bike. Are they going to pick up my bike then?
Yeah. If you fill out your flights form,
did.
we'll know to
I
the
did.
bike courier will meet you when you land. Yes.
Okay, so I don't have to worry about, they'll get it to Yerim.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Barry, I'm glad you can unmute. I know for a couple of calls it was hard for you to unmute, so I'm glad.
We're
Well,
making progress.
I thought I was muting and I meant to unmute.
Okay, well, it's working now.
Yeah. All right.
And importantly, for everybody bringing a bike, we need to know, and the courier will do their best to be there. We will also give you the phone number to call if you can't find them at the airport. But basically, they
And you. They see you walking with the bike, they will come over. It will be
Yeah. they're very good.
with a
But
non-desperate person, but they'll have all other people's bikes lined up, because the flights generally come in the same time of day.
Where is that phone number?
we'll share it with everybody who's
Yeah,
bringing a
okay.
bike. And finally, I should mention for people who are bringing a bike, at Ben Gurion, the bikes come up in a separate oversized luggage area. So don't panic when you don't see it coming up with the rest of your luggage. The oversized luggage area is immediately behind or adjacent to the regular luggage area. And if you're arriving at the same time as other riders, you'll see people gravitating towards there, but that is where you need to go for it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Just in general, pluses and minuses of bringing your bike. I signed up to rent a bike, but I'm on the fence about that.
If you love your bike seat and you're very comfortable on your bike and you put a lot of miles in and you're one with your bike, you might want to bring your bike. You'll be riding something that you know you're comfortable on. Our rental bikes are great, but they're not your own. So they're not going to be as perfect as what you have it from home. So if you're hesitating, I would recommend bringing your own bike. You'll probably in the long run be happier.
And once you weigh in all the costs, it probably costs about the same. So
Well, I have a neck, an extender to raise the handlebars because of neck issues. I don't know if I can get that there or if I should just bring my bike.
So a couple of things, and I would have covered that next in bike transport, but we can talk about it now. If you're renting a bike and you have any accessories you like to have on the bike, which could include handlebar extensions, the extension for the height, your seat, your pedals, bring them. We'll put them on the rental bike. And for yours in particular, because it is a little bit different, if you send us a description of it, we can double check with our mechanics that they can add it to the rental bikes, with most of which we own, but in all likelihood they can. On the other hand, as Sharon alludes to, if one person on our staff used to say, if you have a relationship with your bike, you should bring it. I think if you're thinking of sort of relative value of bikes, the bikes we have, if you ride a hybrid bike, ours would be comparable to sort of a mid-range hybrid if you went into a bike shop here in the States. If you ride a road bike, people in the States, we're a relatively affluent country. Our road bikes would be comparable to more of an entry-level road bike that you get in a bike shop. So most of them are made by Specialized or Trek. They're mainstream lines. They're definitely not from Walmart, but they probably would be more comparable to entry level. So if you ride a bike above that and you're used to it and you really like it, you're coming to Israel for a bike ride, you're going to ride a couple 100 miles plus, bring it. It's the mechanics of bringing it. If you're comfortable packing it on your own, that part's pretty straightforward. Our mechanics work with you, or we'll just take care of unpacking it, repacking it. Again, on this end of the line, packing and unpacking, if you're not doing it on your own, any local bike shop will do it. They'll charge, but they will do it. I always suggest to people, if you're bringing your own, do allow a little bit of extra time for security. Often it's not an issue at all, but sometimes they decide to open every bike case, and we can't really control for that.
The other thing that I would mention is that I've traveled out all the last several years. If you travel with hand luggage, which I do, and a bike case, they do not charge me for my bike for transport. And some of the airlines have gotten to the point where they don't charge either. So it reduces the cost. But even if you have to pay, it's a couple $100. So like David said, it'll be a wash. But I haven't paid to bring my bike over since the second year I've done the ride, and that was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
It's come.
No, it's a really important point. A lot of airlines used to specifically sort of, oh, it's a bike case we charge. Most of the airlines I've checked with over the last few years, they count it as a piece of luggage. So your situation will depend on how many other pieces of luggage you have and what's included in the ticket that you purchased. So we can't tell you how it'll be treated, but you can check directly with your airline and they can tell you. Also, if you're bringing your bike, you should call the airline in advance to be sure they know you're bringing your bike. That's not only related to potential for extra charges, but they seem to like to know. So you don't want to surprise them at the airport.
The only thing with bringing your bike is we travel with our bike a lot, and usually they don't charge for the bike, but if it's oversized, they might give you an oversized charge.
Yes.
So just when you're asking your airlines, ask about if there's an oversized charge. We have a tandem that goes into 2 suitcases, so those are both within the limits, but some of the single bike cases are outside the size limits.
Yes, definitely.
There's a question about the bike box. So, Rachel, the answer to that, I mean, my bike has its own suitcase now. I've done this right enough times. It was easier, but you can go to your local bike shop and they can pack it into a bike box that a bike would come to them in from their manufacturer. You can often at bike shops rent proper bike cases as well. The one I bought was a couple $100. I had $350, but over the course of using it for 6 or 7 years at this point, it's more than paid for itself, and it's on wheels. So when you get a bike box that it comes from the manufacturer, does not have wheels, it's a little harder to maneuver in the airport. So depends on what's best for you, but you can check with your local bike shop. Those are 3 different options.
Yeah, and of the cases you can buy online, there's hard, there's soft. As long as it has a frame that's protecting the bike, my take is they all do about the same job. Some of them have a frame with a soft covering, some of them they're made of hard plastic. One thing I'd recommend against, there are cases that are completely soft, so it's really more like a bike bag. Those are not designed to protect your bike. Those are actually designed for if you need to throw the bike in the back of your car and you don't want it to get other things dirty, you can put them in that. But those will not protect your bike on an airplane. So be sure it's a case with protection for the bike. But like Sharon said, you can do anything from the bike shop. Or one thing I did a few years ago is I started watching Facebook Marketplace, I think it's called. And you know, bike cases are big things. They take up a lot of space, and there's always someone who no longer needs their bike case, and it's showing up on Marketplace for usually pretty reasonable prices. I think I got 2 for $50.
Jeffrey, I see you've had your hand up.
Are we claiming the bikes at the airport, or is the courier doing that directly?
You claim the bike and you take it through customs, and they will tell you exactly where to drop it off. Basically, the courier's truck will be curbside at one of the pickup points at the airport. They'll tell you which one. You bring it there, you hand it over to the courier.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Should we move on to the next topic, David?
I think we've more or less moved on to bike transport and rentals.
Yeah.
We've said a lot about bike transport. I've said something about the quality of the rentals, something I should add. If you are renting a bike, I know I alluded to this, but if you're used to your seat and you have clipped pedals, bring your pedals, bring your seats. The pedals on our bikes do not have clips. So if you have a particular pedal, you should bring it. We'll put it on. If you have any other accessory, you know, a bell, a horn, a handlebar extension, mirrors, bring them. We're happy to put them on. And at the end, we're happy to take them off. A word of advice to anyone who's renting, before you leave the United States, write down the dimensions on the bike you ride here. So distance from the pedal to the seat, from the seat to the handlebar, and that will make it that much easier for the mechanics in Israel to make sure that your rental bike is adjusted to it as close a fit as possible, as opposed to just you getting on it and saying, oh yeah, this feels okay. You're doing a long bike ride, it's ideally it fits as close as possible to what you're used to, not just, oh yeah, this feels okay.
Dan?
Yeah, this is kind of a bike and logistics question I just thought of. Is I know last year they had kind of a longer test ride that was available on that Tuesday afternoon. Is there going to be anything like that this year, or just like short little loopy rides?
Just a small ride to test your bike, but nothing longer this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
good
just-
question.
the rental bike, it's definitely nice to have a bit of a time to try it out a little. So at least
Yeah.
a little test ride.
From what I've read about it, the campus the hotel is on it's on a hill, but it's got plenty of space to check out the bike, ride, make sure it's working, you're comfortable with it, your knees are working after sitting in one place for a 12-hour flight, etc. But we won't be doing a long ride. But we'll
Okay.
definitely be doing what I call the safety ride to be sure everything's working.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Tina, I see you posted in a chat about not having bike shoes and wearing sneakers. Is that okay? Not a rider, but from my knowledge, it's fine. Not everyone has bike shoes.
On an
Is that-
e-bike, you find most people who cycle long distances do have bike shoes. Some people do this ride in sneakers. I'm always amazed at those people, but with an e-bike, that's going to be totally acceptable.
Yeah, the pedals that are standard on all the bikes basically anticipate you're going to be wearing sneakers, so you'll be fine. Sneakers don't give your feet quite the same firmness of support between you and the bike as bike shoes do, but I wouldn't lose sleep over it.
You can also, I'm in the footwear industry, so I will say if you have a hiking shoe, that's probably actually better than a sneaker because it's going to have a firmer bottom. So you don't want anything that's going to be too loosey-goosey or flexible, like David said. You want a little bit of support under your foot and with the pedal.
That's really good advice. I mean, hiking shoes, their sole is probably very comparable to the hardness of the soles on those bike shoes.
You do not want to twist the bottom of your shoe. That would be not good for your feet.
No.
Can
But
I ask a question about the ride as well? What's the weather typically like? I mean, do we need jackets or other things to ride, or is generally, shorts and short sleeve shirts fine for the ride? I realize layering at night, but what about during the ride?
I would recommend that if you have sleeves, bring them. If you have a lightweight riding jacket, bring it, because the mornings can be very cool. And in some mornings, it's not only cool, but we're also going on a descent, and it's much colder as we get to the bottom. So when we do our big descent off the Maktesh, as an example, I don't know, it's like 2 miles or whatever it is, 2.5 miles. By the time I'm on the flat, I'm literally undressing and throwing my stuff to the people who are at the first stop, and I'll pick it up later. I don't even keep it on my back all day long. But you don't need long pants, but I would definitely bring sleeves and a light jacket.
Great, thank you.
and you can always, we have a lost and found that's at the hotel each night, lost and found basket. So if you take stuff off and you don't want to carry it with you, there's places in our vans that you can put it, and it'll show up at the hotel.
And
We do ask that you be sure to pick it up.
Label everything you bring, because everybody has a bright highlighter yellow jacket. People may have the same sleeves. You want to make sure you get your own stuff back. It's like going to summer camp in that, from that sense. Like I have labels on everything. And that way you're sure to get your own things back at the end of the day, but it's very easy to pick it up at the hotel.
That's a good suggestion. True.
Other questions that relate to bike transport and rentals? So last on my list, I'm gonna skip to a couple other things I just wanted to be sure we mention, and then come back to last on my list. But on my other items, one which Alana referred to earlier was COVID. The good news is COVID is not what it was a year ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago. The flip side is it is still real. And for some people it can pose a serious health issue. So we are still asking, and we're going to ask people to affirm it, that they're following CDC guidance for vaccinations, and that they're current. Regardless of the state of Israel's policies, we are asking that people test before they show up for the ride. And it's a bit of an honor system, but when you show up and you say you're there, that implies to us that you've tested and it's negative. And we will probably ask, because we can't necessarily supply them, not like last year, we asked that people be equipped to potentially test every day, but we probably ask that people bring a couple of extra tests in case they need to during the ride. So that's it for COVID. Insurance. Many people have health insurance here in the US that still covers them when they're traveling outside the US. So it's definitely not something we would require, but we do ask that you double check that you have insurance that covers you while you're on the ride. And whether you do or you don't, either way, it might still be worth looking into buying trip insurance that in case of any emergency in Israel, or if say you get sick, some trip insurance would cover like compensation for you if you have COVID and have to end your participation in the ride, or have COVID and have some other expenses related to it. Some trip insurance will cover those extra expenses. We're not insurance agents, so we can't recommend particular policies, but please make sure that you double check what you have. You make sure that if you have a medical issue in Israel, it will be covered, and consider supplemental policies that would deal with changes in flights, changes in hotels, things like that, that could be costs if you had a medical reason why you withdrew from the ride.
And just to be clear, is the trip insurance you can just get with your airline, is that typically sufficient, or are you talking something in addition to that?
I'm not an insurance person. Last year, I think it's a site that Forbes maintains that I ended up going to, and I think we published a link to it, that it's basically, I'm not quite sure how Forbes got into this business, but it compares many different insurance policies. And my finding was two things. One is they provided more robust coverage than the check the box here that could come with an airline ticket. And two, for the most part, they were cheaper. So, well, I can't promise either of those things for this year. I would double check that site. In particular, there's a lot of ambiguity out there about what gets covered for COVID. But there could be differences in other things. So
David, can I say something about that?
yes, please do.
Yeah, you can buy, if most or a lot of health insurance policies that cover you in the United States often do not cover you abroad. You can buy a supplemental policy that will cover your travel abroad. Blue Cross has, if you go to the Blue Cross website, they have something that's, and it's pretty clearly, if it's pretty clear what they're covering and what they're not covering. I have an issue with when you buy an insurance policy and it's not clear what it covers, there's a reason for that, and it's not a good reason. Blue Cross is something you all know about. I'm not shilling for Blue Cross, but it's a known quantity. There are other insurance companies that are known quantities, good and bad. You might run Google, run it by Google to see if there are complaints by the airline insurance is not. If it's not clear that you're covered, it means that you're not covered.
Good.
Good pointer.
Well said. I'd look at the website, and some people
First
deal with
half
an
an
insurance
hour,
agent.
I was muted and I didn't unmute myself.
I think he's still unmuted, but so we'd recommend, you absolutely should be sure that you are covered in Israel for medical emergencies. It's really up to you what else you want to be covered for. Do you want to be able to deal with the costs of changing transportation or additional lodging or things like that? Find the insurance policy that works for you. Do make sure it's in place. And then the last thing that was on my other list is money, cash. During the ride, you really don't need it. The only incidental expenses during the ride itself are, if at one of the hotels there's a restaurant or a bar and you want to get a drink, or at our meals, if we're not serving wine and you want to buy wine, things like that. So that you might need some cash for or a credit card. And then totally voluntary, but we do offer everybody the opportunity to contribute to a tip for the crew. And for that, it is much easier if you have either US dollars or shekels. We've been known to cash checks for riders, but it's hard. Basically, the only way we can cash a check for a rider is that one of us brings extra cash and then deals with the check when they get back to the States. So those are the two key things: tips, drinks. But day to day, I've said to people in the past, if you put your wallet away when we leave Jerusalem, you might not miss it or even have a need for it until you contribute to the tip or end the ride. So.
And Deborah mentioned in the chat, which is a great mention, swag. There'll be some swag to purchase. So you might want to bring some money for a hat or extra jersey.
We have very cool riding caps this year.
Yes,
It's the first year we've had them. I'm excited about them.
Right. So I just want to mention that you can always reach out to me. I have my email is ilana@friendsofarava.org. You could write info at israelride.org. Many ways to reach out. We could schedule a Zoom call, a phone call. Happy to connect and answer any questions. And yeah, so please do reach out if you have questions, and please also fill out your forms on Explority. They really do help us plan for the ride. Any pre and post ride trips need to be booked by the end of August. So you have just a few weeks left to decide if you would like to do that via one of those trips.
I was on the website today and I was looking at the day-to-day itinerary, and I note that the routes with mileage and elevation gain and so on are for previous years. At least it doesn't have Dead Sea, that leg in it. Do you know when you might have an update?
Yeah, David, what generally happens is that our staff in Israel will ride the route maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks out to make sure that there's no major road problems or issues. So until we've verified that the route is going to be the route, we know what it's going to be, but you never know, things happen. So we will make sure it'll be probably up about 2 weeks on the portal beforehand. And you can download them on your device at that time. But yeah, the route is a little different this year. So those elevations and miles will change on the days going into Shabbat. But we'll have it as soon as we're confirmed that everything is set in Israel and there's not construction or something that's going to block us from going on the route.
And the last thing I should say before we just say thank you and volunteer to stick around if there's any more questions, what should you be worrying about now? Training. Cool thing about the bike ride is training means get out, ride your bike, ride your Peloton, ride a stationary bike, take walks, whatever it is that works best for you. But the ride's only 11 weeks away. There's a good time to be training. The other is fundraising. At the end of the day, the ride exists to raise money to support the amazing programs of the Arava Institute. The more time you're able to put into fundraising, crafting the message or taking the messaging that we can provide you with, and getting emails out to friends and family who are potential supporters, both the more you'll raise, but also the more awareness you'll help generate out there about the work that the Institute does. A reminder, its impact potentially on environmental leadership is huge. Building bridges for peace between peoples that don't have a lot of natural connections but share the land is huge. And Friends of the Arava Institute, which is who charitable contributions flow through, is a 4-star charity by Charity Navigator, which is the highest rating you can get. So it's all good, and we really do appreciate every extra effort that people have. Dina's question, we leave fundraising open until the end of the year. We do ask that people try to have at least half or more raised before the ride. But the fundraising site stays open until 12/31. And one reason we ask for sooner is, this is a peer-to-peer fundraising thing. You're raising money from extended family and friends. And people, at least in our experience, they're more likely to contribute before you've done the ride than after. So now is the time to be reaching out to them, explain to them why you're doing this, explain to them what you're doing to support it, how hard you will be working to prepare for it. And you'd love for them to come along with you as supporters of the ride.
And just another thing that I mean, in my letters, I always put how many miles I've done at this point in the summer and what my goal is so that they know how hard I've been working. So when they're getting multiple letters from me, they might say, oh, she did another 500 miles or whatever that's going to be. And one thing that we discussed the other day in a meeting is that, don't be afraid to put on your letters to ask if their companies will match. A lot of companies give matching dollars, and that's sort of an area where we just haven't really put a lot of effort into pursuing, but it's a great way to get to your goal easier and or double your goal where you can get that. So those are a couple of ideas, but if you need anything, I'm happy to always answer fundraising questions. You can email me, Alana, or email Alana, she can forward it to me, whatever. I've had pretty success growing it over the course of the years that I've done it, so.
So with
Thank
that,
you.
thank you all for being here. We can stick around for a few minutes if anybody has open questions, but mostly I look forward to seeing you all in Jerusalem.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming, showing up tonight. And yeah, we're really excited about the ride. It's right around the corner. So see everyone there, and feel free, to hang out for another minute or two if you have any burning questions.
Yeah, thanks. Bye, Neil.
Bye. Good
Thank
night.
you.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
night.
Bye all, thanks.
Bye, everyone.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I always have a hard time finding where the forms and the portal hides.
Okay.
You give me
Yeah.
like the URL or something?
Yeah, I could go on the website now and share my screen so that you can get a look how it looks from your side.
I find it and then I go back to find it like 3 weeks later and I forgot how I stumbled upon it the first time.
I love that picture.
That's me, by the way.
No, that's in
So
Ball
how do I find, what's the URL for this screen? Without a. Is it that, where did it go?
Ilana, you are muted.
Oh no, I've been muted. Okay. It's explority.com/login. So that's a good
But-
way to get into Explority.
It's also, though, if you just go to the Israel Ride website, you'll see a choice
Right.
of 2 logins. And
Right. So I'll show that way to get to Explority. So if you go to israelride.org, there's portal logins up top. And then here's your fundraising portal where you could see your Classy page. And this is the forms portal. So it's,
Okay.
so you get to explority.com. And if you forgot your password, just reset it because I don't have access to anyone's password. So I can't help you there. Anyone else have any questions?
Are there any parts, other than carrying a spare tube or something, anything that people who've done this before suggest bringing?
But if you can change your, it's not bad to have what you can change. You can't bring the little canisters. I don't, the
Right.
are on planes.
They can't, yeah,
I have a
Fair.
tube and I have like the tire irons, but the mechanics are going to come and help you anyway. But if you can get it started,
yeah,
you're quite fast.
there's one part I would recommend. Now
I know
you've
it-
asked,
yeah.
and it's literally the size of a silver dollar, maybe smaller.
It's the hanger, the
is
derailleur
the
hanger.
hanger. Yes.
Yeah.
And derailleurs are relatively standard parts, but every hanger is unique. And I
Yeah.
learned the hard way a couple of years ago. And on the first day of the ride, I did succeed at ripping the derailleur off my bike. That mechanics were amazing and they tried really hard, but it was way beyond the call of duty. They were not going to find another hanger in Israel.
Yeah.
They found another derailleur, but that wasn't going to solve the problem. So what I learned after that, actually, when I talked to my mechanic, he was a little surprised I managed to rip it off a road bike, but he basically said, everyone he knows who rides off-road mountain bikes, gravel bikes, etc., keeps an extra hanger with them.
Yeah.
Good advice.
They're able to deal with whatever kind of bikes, carbon fiber, hydraulic brakes, all that, no problem.
Yeah, our mechanics are excellent.
Right.
We do express to people who are bringing e-bikes or are using our rental e-bikes that if something goes wrong in the motor of
The
the
motor,
bike,
right?
we're done.
Right.
If it's all the things that are the same parts as on pretty much any other bike, they can deal with it just fine.
And they can put the battery, if you've got electronic shifting, they can put the battery back in. Because we have to take it out, I'm assuming, I've never flown with the bike, but I'm assuming that the airlines make you take the battery out.
Double check with the airline, but I think you are correct.
And I'm assuming they can put it back in.
Yes,
Okay,
I think that's a fair.
Any lithium battery cannot fly in
right,
cargo.
yeah, no, I know, yeah. It's
And
just
you-
like the.
Yeah.
Yeah, the battery's buried in the seat post. I know that. I've never taken it out myself.
They do bikes.
Thank you.
Sharon,
Yeah.
you said rental and bringing the bike was cost-wise was about a wash. I think the rental was like 600. I don't recall. How could it be a wash then if you could bring your bike essentially for free?
No,
Yeah,
the-
you need to, if you have a bike shop, pack your bike. That's $150 each at each end, coming and going. That's 300
Okay.
bucks.
Okay,
You pay for the oversized piece of luggage. Okay,
It depends on how you do it. So the-
Complimentary.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if you carry a bike
Close, yeah.
yourself, if you have your own bag to carry the bike, that's one thing, your own bike suitcase, like
Yeah.
Sharon does. But I've had to have my bike packed. I'm renting a bike this time because I'm taking an electric bike. But and I'm figuring that the differential is close enough that then there's the hassle
Well-
of getting the bike to the airport, getting the bike back
Right.
from the airport,
Right.
and all of that's eliminated if you're using a bike. So
that's what I was thinking.
it's not
Okay.
dollar for dollar equal, but when you consider, I'm making the change this year.
I pack and unpack my own bike. I don't pay those fees. I own my bag because I bought it. I bought it. So for me, it's much cheaper to bring
Yeah.
my bike. And for me, it all has to do with what David said. If you're one with your bike and you love your bike and you ride it a lot and you're comfortable on it, you may want to have it. But that
I
said, if
don't,
you
yeah,
so bring your seat,
Bring your
your-
pedals.
yeah.
if you have.
I don't love my
extenders,
bike.
bring
The only concern I have about bringing, I could even bring an extender, but when you extend the stem, then the wires for the brakes could be too short, and they may
Yeah.
not want
So
to
that's
deal
a,
with all that crap,
that's a special situation. If you wouldn't mind, send us a
Pictures?
note with a picture of the extender and let us double check with the mechanics that
Okay,
they could deal with that on one of the rentals. And if they can't, then the decision's made for you and you should bring your bike.
okay, thank you.
Good advice.
Is there an opportunity to rent e-bikes?
There's a
There-
limited number of e-bikes available. We've asked, and I think this is on the website, if you'd like to ride an e-bike, we want to talk to people in advance because we want to be sure that they're actually experienced e-bike riders and that it's not just that, oh my gosh, this ride's coming up. I haven't conditioned for it at all. I'll just rent an e-bike. And because that potentially that could be dangerous. But if they're experienced e-bike riders, we're good with it. It
And
is
Whether
important to know,
There's a limited number of e-bikes.
right?
So
That's
really
what I
want-
was about to reinforce. It's a limited number. So if
Yeah, if
if you
you,
want
if
an
you
e-bike, let us
email-
know quickly.
Yeah, let us know your size also, and we could check if our supplier has it. The cost is, I think, like 500 and something. It's up there, and it's because we read from a supplier. So there's not so many e-bikes in Israel, apparently.
So
Uh,
it's about 500 for the duration of the ride?
I think it's about
Yeah.
600.
But yeah, 500 something. So
Yeah.
it may be closer to 600. I forgot the exact amount, but it's on Explority. So
Okay.
when you do get into Explority, go to the bikes form and all the pricing is listed out there. And feel free to email me if you want to inquire further.
Okay.
I do think we're gonna wrap it up, but as I said, we are available to answer any of your questions offline, and we'll probably have another one of these logistics calls. If you found it helpful, definitely come to the next one. And next week, we're having a call with Rabbi Michael Cohen, who will also be on the ride and is a longtime alum. So that's another opportunity to come and ask and be a part of the community. So thank you
Thank you.
everyone for coming.
Thank
Great
you.
to see everybody. Thanks for hosting us, Alana.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks for all the
night.
information.
All right.
My pleasure.
Good
Good
night,
night.
Night.
Right.
everyone.